This section right here is basically why I'm doing this video, if I'm being perfectly honest. Hi, I'm Kate, and welcome to Always Tuck and Roll. We discuss life, the universe, and everything through the lens of autism, because autistic. And today I thought it would be interesting to talk about fear, anxiety, and phobias. Because, well, all really linked, not the same things. Now, I have chosen to use McLeanHospital.org. They had a great breakdown of everything. I will say it is like all, or almost all, sources that I use not geared towards neurodivergence. Because, to be quite frank, there are not a lot of resources out there for adults with autism. When you Google that type, asking for help, it is almost always geared towards parents of autistic children or parents of autistic adults who cannot live on their own. It is never geared towards low support needs adults who are just trying to figure out what the heck is going on in the world around them, or why the fact that they were autistic was missed until they were almost 40, or whatever. Anyway, so this is not. So I found that I argued with it a little bit, but only because that's what I do. You should hear me and a GPS. We fight. I have no sense of direction. I have no business fighting it, but here we are. Anyway, phobias, fears, anxiety. In that order? Maybe, maybe not. Let's find out. Understanding fear, anxiety, and phobias. Fear is the response to a perceived threat, while anxiety involves worry about a threat that has not or may never happen. For example, if we're in a dark parking garage late in the evening, it's a good thing if we have a little anxiety or fear. Fear encourages us to be on the lookout and remain aware. It often keeps us safe and in tune with our surroundings. A healthy level of fear or anxiety allows us to face challenges and achieve goals. However, there are times when fear and anxiety become unhealthy, when they interfere with our ability to function. Which, yeah, that's me. So, I'm going to link this website below. They do have a great, just under an hour long thing from Dr. Nathaniel Van Kirk, and it breaks down fear, anxiety, or panic. It is really, really interesting. But we're just going to skip over that. So if you want to watch that, go ahead and click on the link below. So, is it fear, anxiety, a phobia, or all three? So, fear. Fear is not something that happens only in our minds. It's a process that occurs in our bodies. In order to survive, human beings and other animals evolved fight, flight, or freeze response to stress, leading to us to either combat or flee from frightening encounters. In fight or flight mode, our heart rate increases, we breathe faster, and our senses become heightened. Blood flows away from our heart and digestive system and into our limbs, allowing us to react to the danger at hand. I mean, I guess I never thought about how the blood flow would be different in the different reactions, but that does make sense. Freeze mode has a different mechanism. Our heart rate decreases instead of increases, and we become immobile. Freeze mode can have a protective function. In the natural world, this is why animals play dead when under threat. In humans, however, freezing can prevent us from defending ourselves or articulating our needs. If you have ever frozen in an altercation, please do not hold that against yourself. It is an autonomous response that you don't get to pick. And whatever happened to you during that time is not your fault. I don't know if it needs to be said, but it's not your fault if you froze. I don't usually freeze. I definitely am more the blood rage type to, not know that I've swung and punched someone. It hasn't happened in a long time, but it's definitely happened. Unfortunately. When our senses register a fearful or stressful situation, the amygdala, an almond-shaped structure in the center of the brain, engages the sympathetic nervous system, which cues the endocrine system to release stress hormones. I think that's the only thing my body does well, is just release stress hormones, personally. I sweat a lot. At the same time, the amygdala fires up, the cerebral cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and judgment, shuts down. That's handy, right? This can make it challenging for us to make good decisions when we're faced with fearful or stressful decisions. This is why, in a horror movie, the girl always runs up the stairs. Because, I'm gonna be honest, a horror movie is the one time that, like, higher ground, like, upstairs is never the higher ground. Sorry. But yes, her amygdala, her cerebral cortex has shut down, and that is why she is running up the stairs from the axe murderer. Sorry. So anxiety. When we experience anxiety, our sympathetic nervous system responds in a similar way as it does to fear. However, with anxiety, it's engaged at a lower but more constant level. Instead of preparing for an immediate threat, we're on edge for prolonged periods of time. Our muscles become tense, we become cautious, vigilant for possible threats, and we may avoid situations in an attempt to dodge danger. I mean, this section right here is basically why I'm doing this video, if I'm being perfectly honest. Just as the right amount of fear can be healthy, a certain degree of anxiety can help us sense danger and conquer challenges. However, when we feel too much anxiety, we spend an excessive amount of time feeling distressed. It's like my state of being. Honestly, it's my full state of being is just being stressed by my own anxiety. Which is why I have a therapist. Racing thoughts prevent us from concentrating, and worries about the future and the past prevent us from living in the moment. Yeah, honestly. And when I was working full-time, that was definitely a daily problem. Our anxiety can be so distressing that we might misread others' facial expressions or misinterpret social cues. Or we could just be autistic and it gets even worse when we're panicking. Just saying. We may be so consumed by potential danger it can feel unsafe to leave our homes. I'm just really afraid of all the drivers outside because I can barely walk to my mailbox without getting nailed by one of my neighbors, let alone when I'm driving on the street or when I was walking from the train station to my old office and I almost got hit every single day by a school bus going left on red against a crosswalk filled with people who had the right of way. A lot of my anxiety involves vehicles and traffic. I will be perfectly honest. Phobias. People often use the terms fear and phobia interchangeably. However, the two states differ in intensity. Someone may be afraid of flying, for example, but can still manage to travel by plane when necessary. Meanwhile, a person with aerophobia, the extreme fear of flying, may never set foot on an airplane. Even driving past an airport or seeing photos of an airplane may create a fear response. That would be so intense. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine that. I mean, I can literally imagine that, but for like my own person, I can't imagine that. Like, buses freak me out because I was trapped on one multiple times because of traffic, and I can't get on a bus. I cannot do it. It's been years, and I won't do it. But just seeing a bus, unless it's not obeying traffic laws, does not stress me out. Unless they're canceling my train and telling me to get on a bus, and then screw those guys. I will drive myself. Oh, God, I hate traffic so much. When someone has a phobia or a specific phobia, as it's called in the mental health field, their intense fear is limited to a specific situation or object. People living with this type of anxiety disorder may not necessarily experience fear or anxiety in other aspects of their life. According to the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, however, people with specific phobia are at increased risk of developing other anxiety disorders. They have a higher risk of developing depressive and bipolar disorders, substance abuse disorders, and personality disorders. Did not know that, so good to know. What if you already have depression? Does it say that? Although some people, I also have an anxiety disorder. Isn't that fun? Although someone with a phobia may realize their intense fear is irrational, for the person experiencing it isn't any less real and terrifying than if a serious threat were imminent. Phobias are the most common anxiety disorder. About 12.5% of U.S. adults experience a phobia at some point in their lives. Some of the most common situational phobias involve the following. And I'm going to do my best pronouncing these, so sorry. Nyctophobia, the dark. Acrophobia, heights. Aquaphobia, water. My partner is actually very not keen on heights. Which was really funny when I was working as a high ropes adventure guide. I used to take pictures of like 60 feet in the air, like, hi. They also have to take pictures of stuff high up in the air. So, there are days where we have to face our fears for work. I'm afraid of phone calls, and I used to have to make them every day. But that's not on this list, and I don't know if it's a phobia and more just like me being neurotic and autistic. But anyway, some of the most common phobias of objects include arachnophobia, spiders, cynophobia, dogs, and hemophobia, blood. My partner is also arachnophobic. I have killed several spiders for them. And actually, once I was holding a ladder that they were on, we were taking down an antenna, and 2 little spiders came crawling down said antenna, so I was left holding the ladder and the antenna while he did basically almost a backflip off the ladder. I would have loved a heads up, but I also understand that fight or flight response and flight won, almost literally. I'm afraid of bees. I believe it's melissophobia. And I respect bees. I need there to be more in the world. However, the second I hear buzzing, I will freak out. And I know it's completely irrational. My issues with like driving and traffic don't feel irrational, so I don't know if I want to call that a phobia because I have seen enough accidents, witnessed enough nonsense in this general area, and almost been hit as a pedestrian several times to not trust a single driver in the entire state that I live in. So I don't know that I'm going to call that a phobia. My issue with buses, that is probably a phobia, and it stems from trauma. And the very idea of getting onto a bus terrifies me, to the point where I overcame my fear of driving in traffic when my train station was shut down. So they're like, we're just going to give you a bus instead. I'm like, no, you're not. I am not getting onto a bus that goes onto a highway. I don't care. So yeah, and I am dealing with that. People who experience phobias have an immediate and intense fear reaction to the situation or object that triggers them. Their heart rate increases, their muscles tense, and their breathing becomes fast and shallow. And I'm an asthmatic, so if I don't control my breathing, I will have an asthma attack on top of the panic attack, which is very dangerous. Because then there's all kinds of, there's just not enough oxygen in the world for you're having an asthma attack while having a panic attack. I wouldn't recommend it. They frequently have panic attacks, which include the more severe symptoms of chest pain, shaking, and a sense of being disconnected from one's surroundings. People with phobias experience extreme fear nearly every time they encounter the object or situation that causes their distress. The level of fear someone with a phobia experiences can depend on different factors: how long they're exposed to the situation, how much of the object they encounter, and how intense is the situation. I can't do the thing with. I should have just done it like this. Anyway, but when it comes to phobias, the presence of other people can play a role, for better or worse. For example, if you're afraid of driving on highways, then it may be comforting to have a friend in the passenger seat. Not for me. If someone is in my passenger seat, it should be me, and they can drive, because I don't want to listen to anyone make my driving worse with their commentary. And it always happens. I don't care who you are. If you've been in my passenger seat, you have made my driving worse. Yeah, a friend could keep you company, point out road hazards, or help you with directions. Or just drive the car so that I don't have to do it. Yeah, on the other hand, their presence could add pressure if you worry they'll judge your driving skills or that you'll be responsible for harming them in a traffic accident. No, I'm genuinely afraid that all of the cars that I am not controlling are the ones that are going to injure me and my passenger in a traffic accident. So there's obviously an avoidant factor in anxiety and phobia, and actually that's sort of how I got here. Because I will let fear control me. I will let my anxieties get the best of me, and I will ignore the dumbest little things until they pile up and almost become a situation, and then I'll just handle it and it'll all be fine. And it's like, well, no wonder I had an ulcer in my 20s. That's neither here nor there. Focus. That's what we're doing today. No, we're doing phobias, fear, and anxiety. And now I'm stressed out that I'm not doing this well enough. Push forward. So we all have these things, and it's good to acknowledge them. Ignoring them, honestly, makes it worse. Not just in that way that, like, your anxieties and fears can compound and just, like, suck you down like quicksand. They can all become unhealthy in other ways. So when fear and anxiety become unhealthy, the signs and symptoms. People who struggle with anxiety, fear, and phobias often wish to eliminate or avoid the experience of any fear and uncertainty. I mean, I don't do uncertainty well, and that's literally like my autism. But that's the desire is impossible, though, since fear and uncertainty exist in life. Tell me about it. It's so annoying. They serve a purpose when they occur in small, manageable, meaningful doses. I would love to not deal with any more anxiety. I don't know if that actually serves a purpose for me. For many people, uncertainty is something that is not radically acknowledged. We accept that our decaf coffee is in fact decaf, although we have no certainty of it. We accept that we will arrive at our destination safely, although we have no way of being sure that will be the case. I actually disagree with that, because if I order a Coke, I sip it and really check to make sure it's not diet. And not just because I'm allergic to aspartame, but because it's disgusting and it gives me wicked stomach aches. So I guess ultimately it is because I'm allergic to aspartame, but also give me what I ordered. I had another tangent in there, but we're going to move on because it left my head. Uncertainty is something we all accept in many things we do, although we may not recognize it. For people who struggle with anxiety, however, accepting uncertainty is much more challenging. It is something that does not come as easily and is coupled with feelings of distress, avoidance, and overall disturbance. Oh yes. Signs that fear, anxiety, or phobias are affecting your well-being. You avoid social situations, travel, and other activities even when you'd like to engage in them. You spend an excessive amount of time worrying to the point where you lose sleep or can't pay attention to what is happening around you. I mean, I have insomnia, so plus a depression disorder and an anxiety disorder, so I'm just, I don't sleep. That's why I'm short. That's literally the running joke in my family, is that I did not sleep as a child, so that I am short. Though I think I would only, if I did, my legs grew the same length as the rest of me, I'd only be 5'2", so again, whatever. You give up or never take on activities that are essential to your quality of life, like you stop driving or never learn to drive. Um, I would love to just be able to stop driving, but like I need to be able to get around, unfortunately. So that's not the way life works. You find it increasingly difficult to leave home or do anything outside of your strict routine. I need routine to live. That is part of my autism. So again, this is not geared towards the neurodivergent. This is just geared towards people. Not a bad thing, but I am going to fight some of the things because I know what I need for my own self and what is triggered by what, mostly. You avoid certain situations, objects, or animals, even though you're aware your fear of them is exaggerated. Yeah, I will avoid bees as much as I can, but I also need them to exist because pollinators are how food is grown. You experience physical symptoms such as headaches, trembling, and muscle tension. How about sweating? Just sweating all the time, because that is like my default setting. Just sweating. So coping mechanisms, always important here. So if our fears and anxieties are creating discomfort, it can be helpful to face them. Once we face the fear and get over the other side of it, our distress is gradually lessened. The more we engage in a fearful activity, the less it becomes. When we overcome fears, we can feel a sense of mastery that allows us to take on new challenges. Here are some ways to help manage fear and anxiety. So exercise. Exercise releases endorphins and other feel-good chemicals into your brain, reduces muscle tension through movement, and can distract you from distressing thoughts. I also, since like I'll count my holds, I find that counting 1 to 30 repeatedly actually also really helps, in addition to the physical act of like stretching. Social connection. When we connect with friends, we can be distracted from our worries, fears, and receive feedback on whether our concerns are reasonable and receive moral support. That does not work if your thing is social anxiety, just saying. But I get it, and people need people, and that's important. Mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness involves being present by having moment-to-moment awareness. Being mindful helps us to pause and to recognize the thoughts we're having and how they are contributing to our emotions. In the case of anxiety and phobia, when we practice mindfulness, we can better assess whether our fears are well-founded or irrational. This is where I spend most of my focus because I need to figure out if this is like a me thing, an external thing, or if I am, or if it is me, how far off the rails I've gotten and what do I need to do to get back. Progressive muscle relaxation. Progressive muscle relaxation involves deliberate tensing and releasing of specific muscle groups, which relaxes the body and mind. People who practice progressive muscle relaxation become better at identifying and addressing tension in their bodies. That kind of sounds like a personal version of like touch 3 things, say 3 things, 3 things you can hear, 3 things you can see, 3 things you can touch. That type of thing to come out of a panic attack. But to yourself, which is pretty cool actually. Breathing exercises. I forget to breathe all the time. Breathing is not as autonomous as they like to have you think. It's a conspiracy. Or I'm just bad at it, I guess. When we experience anxiety and stress, our breathing becomes fast and shallow, perpetuating our distress. Deep breathing, however, automatically engages parasympathetic nervous system, helping us calm down. I'm an asthmatic, so if I have a panic attack where my breathing is interrupted and I have both at the same time, it is very hard to get air. If these methods are not helpful to fully support a healthy level of fear and anxiety, it's time to reach out to a healthcare professional for further guidance. Because phobias cause significant distress, it is especially important to consider professional help when addressing them. Totally. If you can't function or you're struggling for any reason, you should reach out and talk to someone because it'll help. It'll take time. Nothing's like night and day. There's no quick switch, I'm cured, and I'm definitely fond of saying, gee, thanks, I'm cared, sarcastically, but like, no, it is definitely helpful. Well, I hope you got something out of this. I know that I actually learned a ton just from like of my overall Google, but also this specific page as well. Um, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Check in with yourself. And it's okay. However you're reacting to your stress, it's okay. But if it's getting to be too much, please reach out and talk to someone. Anyone. Can even send me a message. I don't know what I can do, but always here for a chat, I guess. And definitely, when all else fails, just don't forget to just tuck and roll. Tuck in the elbows, tuck in the knees, and just go for it. You'll land somewhere. I had another tangent in there, but we're going to move on because it left my head.